I'm going to be quite controversial.
Oh, good.
We should rip up the rule book, forget about handoffs. If I'm going to do some work, some strategy work, I want to see that it's had a commercial outcome.
Any result is insight, and a bad result is as useful as a good result.
Great commercial marketers have a really great...
Hi, and welcome to Soapbox, and welcome to our latest episode where I am here with the lovely Shane. Shane, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, thanks, Charlotte. Yes, Shane Redding. I work as what Charles Handy described as a portfolio worker, which means I do three things. I consult to very large B2B enterprises around the world. And I'm now very fortunate at this point in my career that my business strategy is to find a client on a continent that I haven't been to.
I like that as a strategy.
It's a nice strategy.
It is.
And then I also work as a retained expert for Propolis, the B2B community from B2B Marketing.
Which is where we met.
Indeed, which is fabulous for networking. So if anybody doesn't know Propolis, they should certainly find out about it. And then the last thing I do for fun is work with fast growth startup or high scale businesses, owner managed, looking for them to have a successful future and potentially exit.
Nice. And I love that because it's a real cross section of the industry, isn't it? So it must have given you a really strong view of everything across the industry and where things can go right and where things can go wrong. So this is why you're here today. So I know you and I have talked about this before. And obviously for Propolis, there's a lot of emphasis on the commercial marketeer. And I think people kind of know what that means, but I think it might be good to set some context for this conversation, kind of what you think that means from a not from a theory point of view, but from what you've seen really good commercial marketeers do.
For me, it's about being practical. And I think one of the things that I pride myself on is making a difference. If I'm going to do some work, some strategy work, I want to see that it's had a commercial outcome.
Yeah.
And I think that actually isn't talked enough about in terms of commercial marketing. But to me, the great commercial marketers have a really great strategic business understanding of where the organisation is going, whatever size it is, and then they're able to align their marketing to deliver that.
See, that's a great definition. And I think about my own experience. So I started client side, but actually not in marketing. I started in pre-sales, then I went to alliances, and then I went to marketing. And I've always felt that set me up really nicely to have that strategic commercial lens because I had a target, I had numbers, and I just carried that into my experience. So I think I was quite lucky in that regard. But and it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think marketeers have been shoehorned into certain metrics, haven't they? And I think that's been to the detriment of the marketing reputation.
I think there's another angle to it as well, which is that with the experience we have, we started very much as generalists. Like you, came in as sales. You had to learn. In fact, I was lucky enough to have a grad program where I worked in every single department, including the warehouse, where I learned I was absolutely useless at sticking sticky labels on envelopes. And it's, there's a reason.
How can you be useless at that? Isn't there?
I can tell you now, the warehouse manager just no. But I did make director at 28 and took part in a management buyout, got on the board backed by 3i. And like you, that immersion then to the commercial strategy, what the investors were looking for. And interesting that was late 80s. And then we went into the 90s when, of course, everything slowed down. Mm-hmm. And we really had to refocus and actually, understand what we were going to do to be able to get through that and be successful. I think now the reason that doesn't happen as much is we need these deep specialists.
Yeah.
And that, it's amazing. We've got super talent in the industry, which is fantastic. And they have such depth of knowledge, whether it's search or whether it's digital journeys or they're data analysts, but they don't get that broader experience. And therefore it's really hard because they're not seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah,
and it's very
that's
theoretical
true.
When they are exposed to it. It's not it's not so real.
It's true, isn't it? And it, like you say, those specialisms are needed. So how do you balance that? Because there's, I think it was at the ABM conference last year where people were talking about, you expect all this specialism, but where is the generalism, and how far do people take that? And marketeers are expected to be IT experts as well, so it sort of layers on, doesn't it? And it does, I think it takes a particular type of person to be able to step back from all of that and say, well, that's all well and good, but actually I've now got to get a board mentality going. And that's an interesting question, isn't it? Because marketeers often aren't invited to be part of the board in larger organisations. So I guess that's tied into what we were just talking about.
It is, and I think there's all sorts of reasons for that. But I think that it is this demonstration of clear commercial understanding that obviously the board, needs and wants. But if you can't align that to strategy and show the value that marketing brings strategically, then it's hard to earn the place because you're more likely to be a CRO or a chief of sales who can, firmly sort of tie their
because they grow up
numbers.
with that, don't they?
Indeed.
They grow up with that, like we were saying, with that pressure to be commercial. So let's say I'm a mid-level marketeer, maybe early 30s, sort of coming up the ranks. And if they have come from a specialism, what advice would you give them to be able to get to that point, to be a CMO and a commercial CMO?
So I think it's really, make friends. And I think that sort of networking with talent outside your area of expertise, whether that is within your organisation or outside, organisations like B2B Marketing and their events are fabulous for that, and learning about different perspectives. But I think that the easy one is ask for it. I'll go to your leader and say, look, this is an area I'm interested in. How can you sponsor me to do that? Is there a mentor? Could I actually have a peer from the finance department where I can explain marketing and they can explain finance? And I think that that's what a lot of organisations are looking to do and is really helpful.
Because that's a two-way street, isn't it? So it's sort of, because marketing often sits over here, doesn't it? And everyone goes, oh, cost centre, cost centre, cost centre. So that's quite a nice two-way street and an opportunity for them to feel, even though they're learning and being mentored in that area, they can also do the same in reverse.
So back to that point, Charlotte, I think it's really important that you understand in your organisation what the board thinks the function of marketing is.
Yeah, that's true.
Because, to your point, if it's still seen as a cost centre, then you are somewhere where you're not going to be learning those commercial skills, being blunt.
Yeah.
And that is a question I think, you really need to ask, because it may not be about you. It may be the opportunities that are presented. And actually to understand that your next career step is you need to go somewhere which has this approach that you will then learn from.
Yeah, where they respect the discipline of marketing. Yeah, because otherwise, because you're not going to turn that ship around on your own, are you?
And it's not just respect, it's teaching you the skills. It's teaching you the difference between running a marketing campaign that can, we'll talk about this I'm sure in a minute, a lot of leads, and actually understanding, no, what we're looking to do in this case is drive profitable key accounts.
Yeah, and that is an interesting distinction, isn't it? Because I still, for some of the large companies that we're involved with, I still go in and do like lunch and learn whiteboard sessions on actually what is a marketing strategy, and how do you incorporate lead gen, demand gen, ABM. How do you connect that in with sales? And it is only experience that gives you the ability to do that, isn't it?
It's also a curious mind, Charlotte.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think one of the things, start asking more questions.
Yeah.
Because I think, asking why is a really great way to unlock. So when you've got a campaign and you look at a campaign and it's not perhaps delivered against the objectives that were set, really then unpick it and ask those 5 whys until you get to the root cause, because otherwise the danger is you carry on doing the same marketing. And that's what I mean about thinking strategically. You can bring this at any level if you have a curious mind.
And that's what I say to the team actually at Ice Blue Sky, because any result is insight. And a bad result is as useful as a good result. In some ways more useful because you learn stuff.
Yeah, if you have only got less than a 1% response rate, that's 99% of the data to look at. And there's a lot in there that you can unpick to say, well, why on earth are we including that if that's not working?
When I was client side, I could never work out why everyone got upset with opt-outs. But I'm like, opt-outs, they're the real, because at the time, obviously, this was 20 years ago, email marketing was effective then. But yeah, no, it is interesting. And you touched on leads because we were going to talk about that. And you know, that beast that is sales and marketing working closer together. And we don't have enough time to fix that particular problem. But I do think, you know, and as you know, we focus a lot on ABM and we work a lot in the channel. So lead handoff is a big topic for us whenever we work with a client. And I'm a bit of a one-woman mission in trying to get clients to get out of this MQL mentality and more into a mindset of what accounts are going to buy, how can you get engaged with the most people at that account so they do buy. But how do you see that playing out, you know, more generally around that lead handoff and that mindset shift?
I'm going to be quite controversial.
Oh, good.
We should rip up the rule book.
Nice.
And forget about handoffs.
Yeah.
Hooray! What does the buyer want? Yeah. How do we make it easy? Now, you take that all the way through it to its logical conclusion. It's very simple. It's e-commerce.
Yeah.
Now, I am, for the last 10 years, still surprised at the glacial pace
my Lord.
that B2B is working on e-commerce. But it's what the buyers want. If 90% of your buyer journey is online, why on earth aren't we giving them that last opportunity to buy? And the reason is, it's very simple. It's embedded power base of organisational structures.
Yeah.
You know, that takes a lot of bravery to dismantle a massive sales team and a huge risk. But there's no excuse for not trialling it, you know, and I think this is, for me, that lead handoff, I still can't believe that we're talking about it.
I know, me too.
But we are, and therefore, and this is where I don't like to call it ABM, I like to call it ABMS, account-based marketing and sales, where you have a full team around an account. And I know that's something you advise your clients to do as well.
Totally. I was having a conversation with someone at lunchtime today about that and say, you know, sort of helping them plan a joint project with sales, not a handoff. And I said, similar to you, I said, you got to pretend that structure over there doesn't exist. And you just say, look, we need to work on this project together. We'd really love your help. Don't try and affect remuneration and all of targets and goals. It's never going to happen, depending on what level you are, obviously. But yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a massive power base there, though, isn't there?
There is. And the other place to start, if you're not there yet with e-commerce, is as always starting with the insight on the accounts. How do they buy?
Yeah.
How do you make it easier for them to buy?
Buyers.
Indeed.
Well, and this is why answer engine optimization is taking off at speed, because it's a way for buyers to find out what they need without having to talk to a salesperson. Because, you know, it's so nuanced, isn't it? Because you've got, when I think back to the 90s, you know, the power was in the hands of the sellers. And that's the model we're still wedded to, even though the power base has shifted massively to the buyer. Everyone's clinging on. Yeah,
I mean, the term, I can't remember how many years ago was, you know, at that point it flipped and it was upside down marketing. And you know, and inbound marketing, the term.
Outside in. And
term by HubSpot and all of that. But you're right, we haven't moved beyond that. So, and I think that's a really interesting challenge. And I think we're slow as human beings to realise sometimes that when change is that massive, we don't see it.
No, and also for those that do see it, there's that sort of herd mentality that takes over. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to wait till they do it. I'm going to wait till they do it. I just read the book Make It Snow recently about Snowflake, and about fascinating book. You should read it. And it's about how the CMO and the CRO got together and created this kind of world-class sales and marketing collaboration machine is probably the best way to describe it. But it's a good blueprint for, as you say, ripping up the rule book and then doing things slightly differently.
And it's happening with organisations that have appointed CROs. This is, you're reporting into one, and it's very difficult. I was head of sales and marketing division of Reed Elsevier, and I had to have arguments with myself. But
I want to do this.
Yes,
no, I want to do that.
Indeed. But it's that alignment, and that's why CROs are, I think I've said it before elsewhere, they're winning the battle.
And do you think, just on that, though, in some organisations that it's just another sales job title?
No. Not the ones I've met.
No, that's good to know.
Functionally different. And the ones that are really ahead have a very strong operational lens as well. Because the other thing we haven't talked about is, you can go and generate a load of leads. How many marketers actually sit down and work out whether there's the capacity, not just in sales, but in the organisation to deliver. And so it doesn't happen, in my experience, very rarely. And yet when you start looking at the CX end, which again is where I spend quite a lot of my life, the last thing they should be doing is generating more leads.
Yeah. And that's such an interesting point, because I think when you look at a business of our size, for example, that happens quite naturally. But yeah, in large companies, when they're probably in a different building, like in a completely different location, I was talking to a customer this week where they just had their SKO, but none of that part of the business was invited, and not to be excluded, but just because nobody thought about it. But it's so true, isn't it? And if you start letting customers down there.
And that's where, I'm a great fan of ABM, ABMS, because you have that deep insight to the account. And, again, it's not just sales and marketing, but hopefully your operations are involved there and fixing things that need to be fixed fast.
So you see those good CROs, and this is really nice for me to hear, because some of the CROs I've seen it's just been another progression on the sales job track. So it's really nice to hear that there are the leaders that are doing that well. And is that about breaking down all of those silos?
Yeah, and they've often got a really interesting background. Some of them have come out of IT, some have come out of finance. They haven't necessarily come from sales. So they bring a different mindset, which is really exciting.
Yeah, no, that is exciting. So I think in this short period of time, we've attempted to solve some very big problems. But I think, thank you for your insight, because I think for you've got that range of experience where you've seen the good, the bad and the ugly, I'm sure.
Indeed.
Thank you, Shane. As always, great chat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.